evening, but one that I regard of particular importance because Pierre, who I've worked with now since the start of his basic training, has just completed. And I'd like to first congratulate him and to say that while basic training is basic training, as far as Marilyn and I are concerned, it digs deep and it's not easy. So well done, Pierre. Very nice work. Secondly, just to say that, Pierre, you've volunteered, and thank you very, very much, to share a story that I've been privileged to be hearing and listening to and being part of for the duration of your course. And I've always felt that it requires a bigger audience, that it is something that you should share. And if I could just read 3 sentences that came from your last assignment, just to give a kind of heads up on why I think your work is so important. Firstly, you say, I'm deeply passionate about empowering others to realize their full potential. And we know where that's, or we know what that link connects to very much. And then secondly, from a young age, I was compelled to stand up for those who are overlooked and marginalized. There too, I think anyone who studied logotherapy will get the connection. And finally, this belief feels like a calling, something directed specifically at me. Pierre, if you said nothing else in 10 assignments, that would have been enough. Okay, so very well done. Fantastic work.
Thank you.
Pierre, I'm not going to say any more apropos your story. I think it'll speak for itself. Just to thank you and to say that questions and comments and anything, and please everyone participate, we can have once you've done your story. So over to you.
As I was saying earlier, just thank you to all of you for giving me an audience, and then also to Coral for her exceptional long-suffering patience, because it's been quite a journey for me, this introductory level 1 logotherapy course that I have done. And I think when I share a little bit about my life and where I find myself, possibly it'll bring some understanding to it, and how it was quite something to grapple with so many things in my life. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of a biographical insight into who I am, and then also the intersect of my personal and professional life. That sort of cataclysmic moment where the principles that I have learned thus far of logotherapy really became very real to me. So just to give me a little bit of a background, I grew up in a family where my mother was from an English family. My father, my biological father, sounds like such a clinical approach to it, but possibly when I share more, you'll understand. My biological father was from an Afrikaans family, and both sides of the family had very strong opinions on the two language sets of this very happy couple that fell in love. Anyway, needless to say, they got married. Some members of the family didn't even attend the wedding, and it ended up being a marriage that didn't last too long. It lasted 4 years, but the marriage and the union produced 2 kids, myself and my sister Chantal. And my mother then met someone 2 years after getting divorced and remarried. I grew up in a household where my stepfather, and he never a stepfather, a father to me, and he loomed quite large. He was a very large man, and was very instrumental in, I believe, shaping who I am and my value system. But in the background, there was this absent father who may have been, upon reflection, absent as a result of this new stepfather who loomed so large in my life, but he may just have been absent as a result of not being capable of being the presence in my life that I felt a father should be. In terms of visitation, I lived with my mum, and my dad was able to visit us once a week, and it invariably used to be a Saturday. And I have very strong memories and recollection of sitting waiting on a Saturday morning for this person whom I understood was my father, but never really felt was my father. I would sit outside on the pavement waiting for him to arrive. He didn't turn up all that often. I would often sit until 10 o'clock, and my stepfather would come out and pat me on the shoulder and sometimes bring me a cup of tea and say he might arrive just now. Went back into the house. Who knows what sort of phone calls were made in the day? But invariably would come out and pat me on the shoulder and try and distract me as this little boy of 2 years old to find some sort of activity for me that would make my day seem more full and not so empty as a result of this person that I desperately would have liked a relationship with, but was invariably absent. As I got older, the frequency of those interactions, or the interactions that were meant to become sort of increased in length, and he really didn't emerge in my life. I spent very little time with him going through my junior and senior school, but he was always there, the sort of presence, the shadow in my background as a father. In my time at school, I like to believe that I had some very strong opinions that I felt were very necessary, and I felt very compelled to exercise. And I became very involved politically. My stepfather was exceptionally liberal, and he was part of the struggle movement, and encouraged us to never allow any person to become marginalized and to feel excluded. So I always had an acute sense of a radar that would pick up if people were marginalized. And right from junior school, in senior school, there's quite a poignant memory of my parents being called into the headmaster, and I couldn't really understand why they were being called in. I had obviously tried to behave as well as a 16, 17-year-old young boy can in a very big school. So I was searching my memory for what could have prompted this meeting with the headmaster. Anyway, they came in and had the meeting, and upon them returning in the evening, I'd been at home for some time. My father called me in and sat me down and explained that the headmaster had said to him that there was an opportunity for leadership positions in the school, but with my current political views, there wasn't going to be too much opportunity for them to allow these sort of positions to be exercised. My dad said to me, "What do you want?" I said, "I'd like to do what I felt was the right thing." Just as a bit of a background there, that's sort of the household I grew up in. We were given freedom of expression. I was also always surrounded. My family encouraged us to look beyond what we had and share the resources that we had. So I grew up in a family where my mother with my stepfather had an additional 2 children. So there were 4 of us, and then we adopted another 2 children. We also used to have lots of children coming through our home from various orphanages at the time. I can remember growing up, I left home when I was 18, that we had on average about 25 people that had lived in our home that didn't stay there permanently. I went off to university, got involved politically with NewSAS, and lived what I thought was what my calling was, to be someone that was a struggle participator and someone who would make sure that the marginalized were always recognized and acknowledged and included. Just to get to where I studied education. I became a teacher because I felt I would really like to get involved in working with the youth and possibly providing opportunities to children that they would not have had, or I felt that they would not have had. I then moved to Underberg in 2000. Sorry, in 1992, not 2000, in 1992. And I, myself and my wife started a school, which in Underberg was considered pretty radical at the time. It was a time of Model C schools, and it was the first sort of truly multiracial school in the small farming village. It was also an independent school. We noticed after a couple of years of being at the school that our interactions with parents, the Zulu parents particularly, were pretty limited. And when we dug a little bit deeper and teased out why, we discovered it was as a result of their lack of education or their poor levels of education. And I got involved in an adult literacy group. We started one called the Family Literacy Project, and we started working on farms. And I eventually moved out of the school in 2000 and started running the project full time. And it's where I currently find myself. I'm currently involved in the Family Literacy Project as a director. We work in approximately 50 schools across KwaZulu-Natal, and we also work in various communities with adult groups. They originally started out as adult literacy groups, but the levels of literacy improved, and they have become more groups of support, also with an arm of enterprise development. So to get to where I felt there was a sort of cataclysmic moment in my life, I'll share around the passing of my stepfather. So my stepfather passed away 4 years ago, and it was exceptionally tragic. He was not well, fortunately for not too long, but it was very difficult for me to even go and visit him in his sick state. I would often question myself as to why I felt that way and why it was very difficult for me and why my visits felt so uncomfortable. And I never understood it at the time. Sadly, he passed away, but almost it was a relief to us because his suffering wasn't that long. Approximately a year later, my mother announced that she was getting married again, and it came as a big surprise to us. Couldn't understand why. We all had differing opinions on it, but me believing that I was, and I'm pretty dogmatic in my views, believing that I was the family spokesman, I was the most vocal on it. And often I'd have these conversations with my mum and question why should we be doing something like that, and then leave feeling a sense of emptiness and wondering why I was feeling as I was. Anyway, my mom proceeded with her plans, and the wedding date was announced, and they were going to get married in Underberg. We've got family in Cape Town and Pretoria, so family came and stayed with us. Anyway, the night before the wedding, we were all sitting, and I was sitting discussing with my sister, so my sister from my mom's first marriage, as to how I felt about this marriage to be. And my sister gave me some very sobering thoughts and comforting thoughts on why I should just let it go. Anyway, I reacted quite harshly and sharply. And we ended up having quite a debate about it the night before the wedding. My sister was staying with us. Anyway, she went off to the cottage she was staying in, and it was quite late in the evening, and I went for a shower. While I was in the shower, once again, I was left contemplating why I was feeling like this. Now, I had in mind that I had started the logotherapy course then. And it suddenly came to me sort of cataclysmically that my feelings were as a result of feeling a sense of abandonment. When I was abandoned by my father when I was very young, I only had my sister and my mother. My stepfather stepped into that gap and performed a wonderful role as a father to me, but he had now since departed. My mum had then found someone who was going to replace him. I wasn't really ready for that. My sister, who had offered me sobering advice, I realized that I had been sharp as a result of not feeling supported by the support that I felt I should be getting. Anyway, I quickly hopped out of the shower, got dressed, and went and knocked on her door at 1:30 in the morning and said, "Please, can I chat?" And her and I had the most phenomenal conversation and the deepest conversation I can recall ever having with her. And I think it was as a result of being able to reflect upon why I was reacting as I was and being able to remove myself from the Pierre and this ego that I'd constructed for myself that clearly was crumbling, and putting myself above this person and attempting to understand the behavior. Anyway, it really enthused me. And it has really been something that has really assisted me. My calling in life, I have no doubt it is to do what I'm doing. I have no doubt that it is to be a teacher. That being said, looking back on many of the decisions I've made, I am now able to understand better why I have reacted in certain ways. I look at my relationships with my friends. I built this wall around myself, and the wall is still there, by the way. It's still pretty intact, although I am attempting to break some of the little blocks out of it. I built this wall around myself and try to keep everyone at arm's length and on my terms. Once again, reflectively looking at that little boy who was abandoned, I fear abandonment and fear that potentially, if I give too much of myself, if I'm too authentic, if I am too giving in terms of who I am as an individual, what sits at my core, I risk being abandoned. I'm so glad that I've become aware of it, because it has really helped me with my relationships. It has really helped me to settle and to see and to question, allow that gap between the stimulus and the response as to, this is the way I'm feeling. Why am I feeling like that? Okay, so let's temper my response. Let's gauge my response. In terms of my passion of helping and working with other people, I thought possibly I can share a couple of stories of wonderful people that have truly been an inspiration to me, that we've worked with over the years and have gone on to achieve great things and are continuing to achieve great things as a result of being provided an opportunity, and not an opportunity that I was able to provide them, but in a sort of roundabout way, presenting tools to them and how to use these tools that has assisted them to get where they are. I don't know, should I open up for questions, Coral? Maybe there's some questions before I start sharing individual stories.
By all means, Pierre, does anyone have questions at this point before he gets onto the stories? If I could just say one thing, Pierre, you talk about building a wall around you and you share so openly. I want you to just acknowledge that as part of your breaking down that wall to share as you have tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. I can assure you that the person sitting here sharing what I'm sitting and sharing now would not have happened 3 years ago. And it's as a result of this journeys that I've been on with you, Coral, that has allowed me to start dismantling that wall. And I think all of us do have walls that are in certain areas that we need to pay attention to. But it's as a result of the journey I've embarked upon with you and this whole logotherapeutic wandering I've been on. Right, so I think I'll share. I'll begin with Nompis, a lady who came into our lives in 1993. And she was at the school we were at, and in our area we have a very high unemployment rate, and she came around looking for a job. And the only job we had available at the time, we had a bare piece of ground that we had built a school on, and we needed to get fields going. So there was quite a lot of gardening and bush clearing that needed to happen. So Nompumelelo came and worked for us. And she'd been working for us for a couple of months when one of the students of our school came to us, a 16-year-old girl, and said, she's got a letter from one of the gardeners, and please could you share the letter with me? Anyway, the letter had come from Nompumelelo, written in halting English, requesting that this young girl find her a place to stay because she had nowhere to stay and she was walking over 16 kilometers to work a day. So I said to this young girl, what solution do you think you have? And she had said that there, you've got place for Nompumelelo to stay, and we're willing to share the space with her. So Nompumelelo came and stayed with us. At that time, Nompumelelo did not have a matric. She had fallen pregnant, and her life that she had wanted for herself had come to a little bit of a halt, a speed bump in the road, and she felt very isolated, alone, and unable to reach the aspirations that she had for herself. So we mapped out a path with Nompumelelo of what she really wanted in her life, and that included getting a good education for herself, getting her daughter, who was living with her mother at the time, to come and live with her, and basically pursuing an academic career, beginning with getting her matric. So she went on to get her matric. She registered at a local ABET center, and she got her matric and went on then to study preschool teaching. She then went on to study adult literacy through our program and began working with us on the farms. This is after getting a driver's license. And then ultimately started studying education and is currently working in a local school. She's a head of department. She's got her honors degree that she got through UNISA and is highly respected in the field of education. And the wonderful thing about Nompumelela's story is that it's nothing that we did for her. It is everything that Nompumelelo did for herself. She's a remarkable person who is exceptionally positive, who is exceptionally, she's a troubleshooter who is able to see solutions even in the most dire and difficult situations. And it's such an inspiration to sit with her, as we often do as a staff, and look at solutions to the problems that we face as a community, as individuals within the community, as families, and even as some of the institutions like at the schools. Nompumelelo has got 2 kids. Her oldest daughter, whom was the young lady that I was referring to that came and lived with her, went on to do an honors degree. She's currently doing her master's through the London School of Economics, and she is living in South Korea where she is teaching English. She will be returning to South Africa, though, she assures us. So that is a person that wasn't in the school system at the time. Another story I'd like to share is of Dumisani Cares. One of the things that we do in local schools as the Family Literacy Project is we run a careers program where we provide some sort of career guidance to the senior school students. First of all, to assist them to choose their subjects, and then in grade 11 to assist them to apply for universities. So we do an aptitude test with them, and we look at their personality types and then advise them as to where their strengths lie and what careers are in that sort of band. It's been a very successful program because being pretty isolated and having a paucity of books and libraries and access to technology, many children only see the traditional type of careers that they were used to, that they saw around themselves. So if you ask a lot of the kids, they would like to become a teacher, a policeman, a traffic officer, a taxi driver, a nurse. Some of them aspire to become doctors and engineers. But that's sort of where career opportunities come to a standstill because they don't know of the band of career opportunities out there. So as a result of that, we've been running this career program for a long time. When we go into classrooms, the classrooms are pretty overcrowded. You have a desk, one of those old sort of school desks with a lift lid and a bench seat suited to 2 kids, where there are 4 17-year-olds sitting as a result of overcrowding. So some of the senior school classes have approximately 48 to 50 kids in them, designed to seat 25. In order for us to be able to provide hope and assistance and allow these students to be their best selves, requires us, in our opinion, to have personal and deep interactions with each one of them. But we always put the responsibility on the kids to say, we'll interact with all of you, but for you to get noticed and for us to understand where you are coming from requires you to speak to us and to interact with us. And that's how we usually start our workshops. And we have had such phenomenal and deep interactions with so many kids, and so many lives have impacted ours. And we trust and hope that our lives have impacted theirs as a result of this program. But Dumisani was a young man who stood out. At the end of our session that we were running at the school, he ran down and he opened the gate. And that doesn't usually happen. They usually leave it to the security guard at the school to open. So he immediately stood out for that. The next time we came to school to conduct follow-up sessions, Dumisani ran from where he was, came and opened the gate, assisted us to carry things in, and started engaging us in conversation. Anyway, one Saturday morning, we were woken up very early, at about 5:30, with a rattling at our gate. And I went out, and Dumisani was there. I said to him, Dumisani, can I help you? Thinking that there was an emergency, what had prompted him to come there that early. Anyway, he had ridden 45 kilometers on a fairy cycle. Bear in mind that this is a 16-year-old boy, to come because he had needed work and he was hoping to come and help us with any work we had. And also, he wanted to just come and thank us for what we had taught him about careers, and he very happily shared with us about what he was aspiring to do and to become. And that's our relationship, our deep relationship with Dumisani started. Anyway, he went on to finish senior school. He was orphaned and was living on his own. We were able to provide support to him to get him through school, and also get him onto a tertiary institution, an FET college, where he went and studied mechanics. And Dumisani went from strength to strength. But at the same time, the community he came from, he never ever forgot. In his first year in the FET college he was in, he sent me a message on WhatsApp to say, please, he'd like to, if I could drive him to all the senior schools in our area, he would like to have a careers day for them, to tell them about what they need to do in order for them to be able to succeed at the careers that they choose or where their aptitudes lie. So Dumisani started a little roadshow where he went round to schools, encouraging students to look beyond their circumstances, beyond these little villages where unemployment is rife. Some of the villages, there's over 80% unemployment, where opportunities are limited, where poverty is very prevalent. But he went and inspired them and gave them hope. Dumisani is extremely successful now, and he's running a very successful business. He's bought a beautiful home. He's got 2 wonderful kids, and he continues to be an inspiration to the community. He goes and he looks beyond the circumstances he found himself in and goes to inspire and give back to all the communities that he felt nurtured him. He went to 3 different high schools before we had met him. when he was in grade 9. And he goes to each one of those schools and more to speak hope to the various kids that are still in those schools. I just also wanted to share a little bit about how I feel that my journey thus far, and I'm still on this journey. And I've had this conversation with Coral. Have I found my true calling in life? I'd like to believe so, but that doesn't stop me questioning when it gets tough. It doesn't stop me questioning whether it is completely my calling. It doesn't stop me questioning, am I in the right place? Is this the right time?
Hi,
So
Mum.
I'm often plagued by those thoughts. And I am often left wondering, is this really what I should be doing? But every day when I'm plagued by those thoughts, I take the opportunity to regroup and think, the circle of influence I have is here now. How am I going to have a positive impact on it? So I'm sure there are people out there who wonder and are looking for their true calling. I don't think it's necessarily an elusive thing, but I think it's something that needs constant reflection and also adaptation along the way. Looking at my notes to see, make sure that I haven't left anything out. Something that has really assisted me enormously too recently in terms of my youth and growing up and where I find myself and the patterns that are very often self-destructive and possibly cause me great introspection and rumination, and being able to recognize those patterns in addition to what I've learned thus far on this logotherapeutic journey. I found a book by Mark Wolynn or Wolin, It Didn't Start With You, as something that has really, really been instrumental in assisting me to sort of be more reflective and to really look at my life and look at ensuring that I'm constantly assessing what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and why I'm doing it, in order to move towards being an authentic whole person, being on the journey towards being the best individual I hope and I aspire to be. Yes, I must say I'm exceptionally excited about continuing on this journey, and I'm exceptionally excited about becoming more involved in the group. I haven't really participated in the Thursday sessions. On a Thursday, we have a local cycle club, and one of my passions is the outdoors. So I get out into mountains on a Thursday. Not that my cycling is more important than logotherapy, please. Don't think that. It's just that I have been pretty involved there. But I look forward to future interactions and I look forward to getting more and more involved, because I must say, exceptionally selfishly, because I haven't contributed, I found the journey thus far enthralling and definitely of exceptional benefit to me and to the work that I do. And I'm often discussing with my staff this journey that I'm on, and I discuss some of the logotherapeutic principles that have become almost bumper stickers and homilies to me with them. And it's been so liberating for me to see how some of them will then sometimes repeat what I've said when we're faced with something that is quite difficult and say, hey, hang on, didn't you say this? And this is what I've been doing. So I'm looking forward to the next level of the course. And I'm hoping to be able to use logotherapy more with our staff, who are so exceptionally committed to what they do in their communities and just give of themselves selflessly. So thank you. I'm not sure if there are any questions, if anyone has any comments. I'm open to comments.
Yeah, may I start by saying, you're not getting off the hook. We've got you and we're going to keep you. And just so that everyone knows, Pierre has committed to both the advanced and the professional course. He has committed to going all the way, which is fabulous. And there will appear be a lot more opportunities that suit you that you can get involved with. I know you and I have already started talking about your leaders, your project leaders, and how we can actually get involved with them. We did have a discussion a couple of days ago about living logotherapy, and that was the tone of the kind of interaction we'd like to have with your leaders. So perhaps there were two things that have occurred to me. Firstly, how did you find us? Why logotherapy and why now? And secondly, you did talk about you feel a profound calling to guide others into the heart of nature. Maybe expand on that a little bit. You're still muted here.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Unmuting. So my journey into logotherapy was twofold. So a gentleman who had a house here, and I'm sure most of you probably know him, Classy. I met him, Classy Vessels, yeah. I met him in Underberg, and him and I had some wonderful interactions. And my wife, who's a psychologist, had some interactions with him and his wife and invited them round to tea. And we had a long conversation around logotherapy. So my interests were piqued then. I had read Man's Search for Meaning a long time ago. In fact, I've reread it on numerous occasions, but I had never even known that there was a Viktor Frankl Institute in Southern Africa. My wife pointed it out to me after us having many conversations, post having met Classy. And she said, listen, there is a Viktor Frankl Institute in Southern Africa. Why don't you just go and have a look at what they have on offer? So through the back door there, I went and explored what was available and became very excited about the prospect of it. But I must say at the outset, it wasn't necessarily to do any work on myself, Coral. And you know, you and I have had those conversations in completion of my assignments that I often felt that I was someone who was whinging and bemoaning my childhood, where it wasn't necessarily that. It was just that through logotherapy, I'd become reflective, looking at my upbringing and how it shaped me, the positive aspects as well as those negative aspects that I battled with. It was never for that. I was wanting to embark on this journey to learn more about logotherapy, to learn more about Viktor Frankl and his approach, not necessarily to work on myself. It wasn't something that I ever indulged myself with, even the thought of that. I grew up, as I say, my stepfather would be the kind of person who, while he allowed us to express our emotions, if you spend too much time contemplatively, he would tap you on the shoulder and say, pull yourself together, mate. Why are you so glum? Are you sulking? So it was almost considered a weakness to, and I won't say to be contemplative, but to indulge in too much rumination. So one of the walls or one of the blocks in the wall, or maybe the cement in the wall was, not necessarily wanting to do too much work on myself.
And then that the guiding into the wild. Have you had any more thoughts on that?
Yes, I have. So one, as I explained earlier, one of my passions has been outdoors. I love the bush. I love the mountains. In fact, we moved to the southern Drakensberg to be closer to the mountains. We had lived in Pretoria, and we had a holiday home down here. So we moved in order to be able to get outdoors. And I love the bush. And what I found is that, and we have taken many groups of children into the bush, groups of kids that would have been unable to have that kind of experience, groups of children who were privileged but were never offered that kind of experience. So the whole spectrum of language groups, population groups, and levels of affluency. And what always stands out for us is how these interactions with this greater universe, these interactions with a force greater than themselves and ourselves, produces remarkable results in terms of getting through to children that are possibly battling, getting through to children that are possibly feeling marginalized or feeling hopeless, that their life doesn't have any meaning. That sort of interaction brings opportunities to bring hope and to break down those constructs that possibly come from circumstances and the environment and the guards that they have. They seem to get dropped very readily out in the bush. So one of my passions would really be to embark on experiences similar to what Classie does. Him and I have chatted about it, where people are provided the opportunity, and particularly kids and marginalized people that haven't got the access to the kind of things we would do, and have access to spend time in nature, to realize that there is a greater power and a greater force out there that can be tapped into and be acknowledged, and hopefully through that finding more significance to their lives.
Does anyone else would like to say something or ask a question?
If I may, if you don't mind.
Of course. Please.
Hi, Pierre. I'm Leighton here. How are you?
Good thinking you. Sorry, is that Leighton?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much for your talk. It's very interesting. So
Hi, Leighton.
I was wondering. Yeah, okay. I was wondering if I could ask a question. I hope it's not too personal, but so you mentioned you came to the logotherapy without sort of the need to look at yourself. Was it more to focus on other people or helping others? But you say you did get some insight into yourself from the course.
Yes, Leighton. So basically, what I'd intended when I was looking at logotherapy and I enrolled for the course was to be able to get information and be able to pass it on. I think one of the walls I built around myself was to make myself as impermeable as possible. And I think the true beauty from what I've learned thus far is to look at myself and to become basically to say yes to everything in spite of where I find myself. And the walls I'd built around myself were protective walls, and I'm slowly dismantling those as a result of what I've learned. So it is. I'm so excited about that having happened, rather than having just had the head knowledge of logotherapy. Coral has guided me to really, to take it to heart and really do the work on myself that is so necessary. And I must tell you, there's lots of work to be done.
Yeah, I think we all do. Thanks. Yeah. So just want to clarify for my own mind. So when you spoke about you came to the realization that you built these walls around just before you had that talk with your sister. Were you in the course at the moment, or is that a skill? Let's call it a skill that you achieved before doing the course. This like introspective, self-reflective type of skill to see this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and I need to work on it. So was it before the course, during the course?
So look, I was always aware of the fact that there was work to be done. I definitely knew that I wasn't always, let me say, very rarely was I the person that I had hoped to be in my essence. And I was, one of the things we encourage is reflection, and all my staff. So I knew the talk, but I wasn't necessarily walking the walk. And I can't say it was definitely logotherapy, but I feel it was. I think going through the activities and being guided by Coral, I sort of made myself more vulnerable because I believe that in vulnerability comes an authenticity. And I had built the self that I felt was being authentic. I was dogmatic in my views, but sort of behind this persona that I was projecting, things were really falling apart, and I was aware of that, but that wasn't what I was projecting to the world. And it was that cataclysmic moment where everything came together. And I think I can't see any other reason. I mean, I had been reflective and had tried to find solutions to these things that were bugging me, but wasn't necessarily paying too much attention to them. I didn't necessarily have the skill set at the time to be able to begin grappling with them, to wrestle with them. So I think logotherapy has possibly provided some of those tools, and I'm learning to use them.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, Pierre. Thank you.
Coral, can I say something?
Sure, please do.
Hi, Pierre. I'm Mark. I'm one of the trainers in the advanced and professional courses. We haven't met yet. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'd like to reiterate what Coral was saying earlier about the discussion we had amongst the trainers the other evening about living logotherapy and what do we offer through the Institute to people who are wanting to broaden the base and scope of logotherapy in their own lives and in communities. And Coral, I'm maybe speaking out of turn here, but as we go forward in defining the various arms of the Institute, I would love to suggest that we get Pierre to come and do this presentation at one of our trainers' meetings as an example of exactly where we see this kind of work going, both on the level of self-growth, self-awareness, but also applying logotherapy, not simply in the purely therapeutic model, but living it on a daily basis and spreading it, the philosophy of it amongst communities. Pierre, I think you the most ideal person to have with us at the Institute at the moment, which is wonderful. Obviously, you were living a very logotherapeutic life already, whether you knew it or not. I mean, I think those of us who grew up are old enough to remember growing up under apartheid. I mean, that we were presented with specific challenges through that, and some of us rose to them, some of us didn't, but you were obviously already taking on that responsibility for what you saw around you that needed to be changed. And I just want to say, on the level of the self, the self-growth and looking into oneself in the light of logotherapy, it's impossible to avoid it. And you'll find that more and more as you go into the advanced and professional courses, that it is impossible to actually grow in the knowledge and practice of logotherapy without growing and learning more about oneself in terms of the philosophy and the therapeutic principles and all the other wonderful things that go with it. So thank you very much. Your talk was very inspiring.
Thank you, Mark.
I will make
it took quite a lot of
Sorry, carry on, Pierre.
You've just amplified what I was going to say. It took a lot of persuasion, well, not too much persuasion, but Coral convincing me to come and talk today to the group. I am used to speaking to groups. I'm a school teacher, but I was like grappling when I was preparing what I was going to say, grappling with how much can I share, how vulnerable can I make myself. So there've been lots of things that I've held back, but yeah, I look forward to the rest of the journey. I think if I can learn as much as I've learned up to this point and more, I really look forward to applying those skills to my own life, which will make all of those around me very happy, and then hopefully being able to implement them and assist other people. I feel that the change that I've seen in myself, and I trust that other people have seen it too. My wife Jacqueline constantly reminds me, like, wow, like that's wonderful. Like, was that a logotherapy thing? Where's that coming from? So I found them exceptionally valuable and definitely made me feel a lot more comfortable in myself. And yeah, I look forward to being able to assist other people that are possibly battling to possibly feel better and provide some of the insights that I've learned to them.
Well, there's obviously been a lot of growth because your presentation was fantastic. I mean, you presented it so confidently with a wonderful mix and balance between the vulnerability, sharing, some personal stuff about yourself, but also how you apply it in your daily work and your daily life. So if you've ever had any doubts about yourself being able to do a presentation, and logotherapy has got something to do with helping with that, then it's sure working.
So, Pierre, the next step is your advanced. And I'm sorry Marilyn's left because she'll be co-training with me. She's going to be doing your clinical side, a very, very gifted clinician she is. So you're in good hands there. And we both look forward to working with you. Yeah, and we will, Mark, thanks for the suggestion. I will make sure that you do a presentation for the trainers. It will happen.
Carl.
Okay. Does anyone want to say? Sorry, Pierre.
Sorry, Pierre. It's a challenge that you're being presented with.
Any more questions before we end? Oh, Pan.
Yeah. No questions. I just want to thank you so much for your vulnerability because, when somebody identifies with your story, it's actually a very healing and it's a very special thing. And I did when you were talking about your dad and how you longed for him and that. I mustn't talk about it because I'll start crying. But I just want to thank you so much for that because I could feel something special that you got a kindred spirit in the world, somebody else that feels and knows what this feels like. So I'm very grateful. Thank you. And your talk was beautiful. What you're doing is beautiful. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Pan.
Okay.
Hi, Carol. Can I say something?
Yes, of course, Renelwe.
Okay. Obviously, don't know a number of people now. I did logotherapy back in the day with Terrier at UNISA. But I just wanted to make a comment to Pierre. And I think I would like to summarize it in 2 words. One being authenticity and the other being hope. Your authenticity invited me personally into your safe space and related to your humaneness and who you are. And the other word, hope, the story about Nompumelelo, for starters, Nompumelelo is a Zulu name, and I'm not Zulu, but it has to do with success. And the successful story that you have shared as a hope for South Africa. It's a hope that even in the worst of situations, like literally what came to mind was tragic optimism, that in her state and her attitude and how she related to her situation and all those external conditions, but within her, the response that she got and what she intended to do and what she is and the meaning it brings to those that know where she would be coming from or where she was coming from. So I think as great hope for South Africa, as great hope that a person who's living logotherapy can actually communicate a message of hope to those that may think that it's a lost game. South Africa is not what we had hoped it will be, even with the changes that occurred post-94. So I think I'm really grateful to have made it and to listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renilwe.
Anybody else? I want to say something, Pierre, just on a more practical side. Having worked in an NPO myself for many years, that you've been running on funding, on generated funding for an NPO for 32 years. That is a huge achievement in and of itself. The pressure of finding the funds, there's always a practical component to all these things. And the pressure of finding those funds for 32 years is unbelievable. It's yeah, I can really get that and admire that very much.
Yeah, thank you, Coral. That is often people will ask me what I do. And I'll say to them, I'm like the beggar who stands at the intersection, except I sit behind a computer and I look for funds and write funding proposals, in addition to designing programs. So it's one of the challenges, but it's what I know and what I'm passionate about, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Did USAID have any impact on you?
So we have been funded by USAID in the past. In fact, one of our facilitators, a lady from the little village of Loteni, Lower Loteni, outside Underberg, possibly about 38 kilometers away from here, on a dirt road, received an award from USAID for the work we were doing in about 2000 whenever George W. Bush was in power, and actually went over to the United States of America, and our project got an award as a result of the work that we did. So there's a photograph of Florence Molefe on the wall in our offices receiving an award from George W. and Mrs. Bush in the United States of America. We also recently, 2 years ago, did a PEPFAR program, President's Emergency Program for AIDS Relief in HIV/AIDS in our area. But fortunately, the grant wasn't renewed. And I say fortunately, we were exceptionally disappointed at the time, but we obviously cut our cloth accordingly back then, rather than having been abandoned. Lots of our partners are finding themselves without any work, and it's been very tragic in our area, where the projects that have just closed down.
No, it's disgusting what he did. Anyway, it's another subject. Yeah, it's now 7 o'clock. If there's no more question, let me just say it's been such a pleasure working with you. I've been touched to tears. I've spent hours thinking about you, and I look forward to our journey ahead.
Thank you, Coral, and thank you for tolerating me and encouraging me to keep going. It's taken me a long time to complete.
You're more than tolerable, I promise you. Take care,
Thank you.
and we'll see you again soon. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice meeting you.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Carol.